Hi, everyone. Today, we're so excited to chat with the Chief of AI and Data Science at Flatiron Health. We'll explore how they're using AI to advance cancer research and improve patient care. Let's dive in.
Yes, thanks so much, Will, for being here. Would love to start with introductions to yourself and your bio and background, and at a high level, the amazing work that Flatiron Health is doing for patients and the industry.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Evan and Irma. It's great to be here.
Great to have you.
So yeah, I'm happy to introduce myself a little bit. So I lead data science and machine learning here at Flatiron Health, as well as AI, of course. I'm kind of old school, so I always start with machine learning because that's where I got my grounding. But nowadays, everything is AI. There is a lot of overlap. So I actually got my start in machine learning building recommender systems, in particular for music recommendation. So
Wow.
that really, I'm a huge lifelong music fan, and that kind of problem space got me totally hooked. Originally working on the recommender system for Beats Music, which was an app that the headphones brand launched, and then moving over to Spotify and working on personalization problems there. I think in terms of my journey into Flatiron, while personalizing music and personalizing medicine are kind of involve radically different efforts, there's actually some core common threads that have really gotten me excited about the potential of really making personalized medicine a reality in the way that so many other things are personalized. And of course the amazing benefit is, optimizing regimens for cancer patients means that you can dream of a world where effective therapies are finely tuned to each patient that minimize adverse events, and that, increasingly, I think as cancer becomes more and more a collection of rare diseases rather than kind of like a monolith, this is really, I think, in a lot of ways where personalized medicine and oncology is headed. So I'm really excited about generally this problem space, and I think the way that Flatiron is approaching this problem is super compelling and exciting to me. And I think that, in particular, the data that Flatiron has available at scale is one of the core ingredients of making this a reality.
Wow.
Great introduction. Thank you, Will. So let's dive in. Let's talk about how Flatiron Health is actually using AI and specifically data science to improve cancer research and help patients. So give us more details.
Yeah, absolutely. So is it helpful to kind of quickly just introduce, Flatiron and how the business works and the company?
Yes,
Absolutely. Yes.
absolutely.
Go right
Okay,
ahead.
excellent. So to start with, Flatiron's mission is to improve and extend lives by learning from the experience of every person with cancer. And that's a hugely compelling mission to me. And I think machine learning actually has a really important role to play there. So to kind of back up and talk about the company as a whole, Flatiron has a point of care solution called OncoEMR that's in about 40% of the community oncology clinics in the US, as well as
Wow.
8 academic medical centers. And we then take the data, the patient records from OncoEMR, and which are consented and anonymized, and then we make that data available for research with our biopharma customers and research partners. We're also increasingly building tools to accelerate clinical research, and thinking about ways to integrate clinical research into everyday care. So that's a super high level, quick overview of the company. But going back to the mission, right, we have all of this incredible patient data. We have, over 4 million patients in our database. And the really key way that ML has a role here is actually unlocking insights on all of those patients. So, going through and manually reviewing those charts, having human experts go through each chart and determine all of these important variables about a cancer patient's status isn't impossible, essentially. And
Right.
it's an approach that Flatiron took early on, particularly when we were really just establishing what real world data was for oncology as a discipline. It felt important to have experts kind of going through and actually determining all of these key aspects, key variables like a patient's stage, the histology of the cancer, biomarker status, all of which only exist in unstructured text. But the problem with that is that it's really expensive, it takes a really long time, and it just doesn't scale. So when you talk about unlocking insights on 4 million patients, and going back to Flatiron's mission to really like learn about the experience of every person with cancer, ML is not only a nice to have, it's a necessary to have. And that's really been an incredibly exciting journey to be on during my time here at Flatiron.
Oh, incredible. Um, so what are some of the major challenges or roadblocks that you face applying AI to cancer data versus other kinds of data? And, how are you and the team overcoming those?
Well, the stakes are really high, right?
Yeah, sure.
So if you get a music recommendation that's bad, it's just, you skip it. If you are misclassifying a whole population of cancer patients that lead to wrong conclusions, that's a very, very different world. So it's something that we take very, very seriously. I think when I think about I think in general, like the stakes for AI and healthcare are just really different than they are for a lot of other disciplines. Maybe finances is kind of one of the closest things. But I think one of the core things is kind of like approaching this responsibly means you have to think about validation very much. So one of the benefits of kind of having been using humans to manually annotate this data for the past since Flatiron was founded, basically, is that we have a decade's worth of really high quality labels that we can go and actually validate model performance against. So when I think about kind of like responsible use of AI, it's how are you validating that the output of a model is correct, right? And I think pretty well known now that one of the very real limitations and challenges with LLMs and all of this new wave of generative AI is that models hallucinate all the time. And if you're not able to kind of verify that you don't have a golden standard to kind of reference against, there's all kinds of ways things can go wrong.
Yeah, big
For
challenge.
sure. So you mentioned real world data. Can you explain to our audience what the difference is about collecting real world data versus some traditional medical clinical trial data, and what unique insights does real world data offer?
Yeah, so I think well, real world, to start with, going back to kind of this vision of like a personalized medicine, right? Real world data is collected from the real world, so just basic kind of encounters that people have with medical systems and doctors, and there's just way more of it, right? So clinical trials are typically quite small, especially in oncology, or kind of like rare disease areas. It's just very hard to find enough patients to actually get data at scale. So real world data is incredible in that you can get data and insights around a much larger and much more representative patient population.
Mm.
And so, when you think about, I think, going back to the connection with personalizing music, I'm someone who has really weird taste in music, right? So like I like Beethoven and I like Japanese rock from the 70s. And there's just not a lot of people like me, which means my music recommendations are generally not very good. But what you're looking for is enough people who are similar to you to actually be able to properly tune a recommendation. right? So I think that's what real world data can really afford, is when you think about rare disease, rare patient cohorts, also there's so many factors that matter now for research, right? So it's not just, we've learned, it's not just, what is your disease? It's what is your disease? What are your comorbidities? What is your age group? What is your geography? What are other lifestyle factors? What's, let's make sure that we have representation across different races and ethnicities and genders, right? All of these factors mean that it's really, really hard to actually accrue data that's representative of the addressable patient population. So I think at a high level, that's one of the really exciting things about real world data versus clinical trial data, which tends to be overwhelmingly wealthier, whiter, more well-educated, more from urban areas, and just smaller, just like statistically smaller, right? So I think real world data gives us the opportunity to learn from a more representative set of patients, and also see treatment patterns in the real world, which is really exciting. So that means you can also do things like understand off-label uses of drugs, and kind of think about ways to expedite approvals. So one of the really transformative early wins for Flatiron was that we had a ton of data about male breast cancer patients who had been receiving a breast cancer drug that was not, there was no label for men, and basically we used the data to demonstrate that that drug was safe and effective for them, which led to the label being expanded. So I think those are some of the things that are really exciting about real world data.
Oh,
Yes, in a rare
fascinating.
disease.
So as you know, healthcare and other industries have a real data protection, data privacy problem. What's your approach or philosophy around ensuring information stays private and secure while allowing for the important research here that's being done?
Yeah, so I mean, Flatiron is like built on a foundation of consent and de-identification from the beginning. So this is not something I, was involved with setting up. It's been since the very beginning of the company. That's been critically important, that we can that patients give their consent to have their data used in this way, and that there's no way to identify with them. So we work with statistical experts to make sure that whenever we're shipping data on a patient cohort, there's no way that any of those patients could be explicitly identified. So it's super, super important for sure.
Wonderful.
Well, can you share in your recent projects or breakthroughs or examples at Flatiron that show AI is making a big impact on cancer care? So maybe bring it a little bit closer to some real world examples of how availability of this data now made a big difference for patient care.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so I think one of the really exciting ones is being able to identify patients for clinical trials, it kind of in real time, right? So making trials available for a much broader swath of patients, and kind of like in real time identifying practices that maybe typically aren't as close to the kind of clinical research that goes on at academic medical institutions, identifying when their patients might be a good fit for a trial. And that's something that ML is hugely important for, because it means that you can be unlocking, all of the data that goes into the inclusion exclusion criteria of a given trial in real time, right? So you can know these patients are all good fits, and we're going to flag to their oncologists that they're a good fit for a given trial. On the flip side, I think AI is also really great at knowing kind of geographically, or like within Flatiron's network, where sites might be really good to think about recruiting patients for, to create a more representative clinical trial. So I think those are both two really exciting things. A lot of patients who don't live in urban areas, aren't close to academic medical institutions, just don't have access to the clinical research and clinical trials in the ways that other people do. So that's one. I think clinical decision support at the point of care is another really important one that I think will only become more important. As we move into this world of personalized medicine, where there's so many different regimens for so many different patient profiles, it becomes really hard to keep track of everything, right? Because there's just many, many different pathways that can work for different kinds of patients. So I think clinical decision support is a really key part of that equation. Just like helping practitioners navigate an increasingly complex and granular landscape. And I think finally, over the past year, the kind of ambient scribe space has become really, really exciting. I mean, when I think about like what Gen AI has done for healthcare, probably the first thing I think about, really, because I think it's important to distinguish AI from generative AI, right? Like a generative AI is AI that actually generates something. So there's a lot, and I think a lot of the hype about ChatGPT and et cetera over the past year is sometimes people lump them together. But when we're talking about generative AI, it's actually the model is producing something and producing a structured summary of a patient encounter, which the ambient scribes do, is just so transformative. For doctors who are burnt out, who have way too many patients, who are spending hours at night writing up notes, and who also aren't able to actually relate to their patients, right? You're delivering totally earth-shattering, life-changing news, and you're typing into your computer, right? That's like so far from ideal. And I think with ambient scribe, there's the potential to remove that that interface, right? Remove the computer from the equation and actually make it so that a doctor can really be present when having those really difficult and important conversations.
Also well said. Amazing. So as you know, collaboration is key in healthcare. Maybe talk about how you work with others in the field, whether it's big tech companies or, research institutions, government organizations. There must be, such a variety of collaborators when it comes to your AI initiatives.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to approach that one. So, I mean, I think the first one that comes to mind, I think, is that with the kind of recent generations of LLMs, it's just been kind of game changing. The way that we're able to use them to really accelerate kind of our core task of extracting data from unstructured documents. Over the years, we'd actually built up some really powerful deep learning architectures, which we use to have been using to extract data from unstructured documents that are generally very performant. But there are places where there are challenges, and we've had trouble, reaching the same level of performance across every kind of variable. So I think with some of the recent LLMs that have been released, GPT, Claude, these kind of big foundation models, they're really kind of amazing tools. And they're not better at everything, but they're particularly with kind of longitudinal data, so like disease progression and complex temporal sequences, they can be really, really amazing, especially when you use kind of more, I think we've learned a lot about prompt engineering over the past year. Recently doing a lot of stuff with chain of thought prompting and agentic design, which are these kind of like ways that you can really refine what these LLMs can do. So that's definitely the first thing that comes to mind. Flatiron has a number of like academic collaborators that both have worked at Flatiron or that we've established relationships with. I think one area in particular that a former Flatiron colleague who's now in academia that's been really interesting to work on is thinking about ML quality and how to think about evaluating the quality of ML performance. So I think that's and we published a paper in Cancers, which is kind of our evaluation framework for ML extraction of real world data. So that's definitely, I think, was a really valuable collaboration. And we stood up like a scientific advisory board with folks from Columbia and Stanford and kind of respected academics in the field to really think about it. And I think it's kind of an open question in a lot of ways, like how to actually rigorously evaluate the quality that's being produced by these ML models.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's turn to this next question, which I have. What advice would you give to aspiring data scientists who want to make a difference in healthcare in particular, and especially in cancer research? So we talked about your background and how you got to Flatiron Health. So maybe how they can pivot from working on the latest cool phone app, perhaps, to making a real difference in healthcare with this important set of skills, data science, AI, ML.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great, I think the first thing is to not be intimidated. I think I was definitely intimidated. I had a close friend of mine had gone over to Flatiron from Spotify. And when I was thinking about my next step, we connected. And she told me it's great that you don't have a background in healthcare because you're going to have a really fresh perspective on the work that we're doing at Flatiron. And I found that to be the case more or less. So I think don't be intimidated. I think it's a really important problem space, and we need everyone we can get to be thinking about the safe and incredibly exciting application of AI and ML within the healthcare space. So I think that's the first one. I think I increasingly think like starting to develop more of like a product mindset is really valuable. I think like I see, especially with there's so many tools now that help you write code. So I think that projecting out a couple of years, I see kind of like product and AI and data science all converging in different kinds of ways. So I think I would advise anyone who's interested in kind of applying AI to many problems to start thinking also about like what it means to think about product development. And I think that's been really useful. I think there's certainly a place for kind of pure academic AI and data science. My feeling is healthcare is a place where it's much more about how to apply these cutting edge models that are developed elsewhere to solve really hard problems, right? There's a big debate around like, do you need an LLM that's just trained on healthcare data versus can you use GPT 4.0 or whatever to solve the same task? And I think the question's still out there, but I err on the side of like, you can use these big foundation models that companies that are ready to pour billions of dollars into them are developing, and they'll be pretty good at solving a lot of healthcare challenges.
Wow, great insight.
Fantastic.
So speaking of challenges, looking ahead into the next few years, do you have any particular new or emerging technologies or trends that you're most excited about in your space? And what is the potential impact you imagine them having?
Yeah, I think there's a couple. Right now I'm really excited about this agentic design. So using multiple different agents to solve a problem. I think it's really effective way at dealing with hallucinations and kind of just generally up-leveling performance. I think I'm really excited about the potential for like digital twins to impact clinical research. I think it's a bit out, but I think eventually those will be really powerful tools that again enable us to get to a world where medicine really can be personalized for everyone. So by reducing the number of participants in a clinical trial. So I think I'm very excited about that. I think there's a ways to go to really make it a reality, but I think one day that will be incredibly powerful.
So exciting. And I think
Well,
Irma, probably, I think we've exhausted Will here with our questions. Probably now's a good time to say thank you and wrap up. And any final thoughts?
well, I just wanted to say myself, thank you so much. As a cancer survivor myself, I really appreciate your work and work of others who are advancing cancer care and allowing more and more patients to benefit from it. I also appreciate your view of cancer as a variety of different conditions. We're learning more and more about the importance of environment for cancer, and then there's so many different variations. So getting to the N of one, also in a meaningful context of all the data that you have available. So thank you so much. Any parting thoughts from you, Will? Anything super exciting on your horizon personally, or events or things that you want to bring to our attention?
No, it was wonderful meeting both of you. I really enjoyed the conversation, and thanks for inviting me to be a part of it.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thanks for
you,
being
Will.
here.
Thanks so
Thanks for
much.
watching, listening, and sharing this episode. Take care.
Great.
Bye bye.
Thank